Hi, everyone. The topic for this week is framing. You may have noticed that I asked you to read 3 chapters this week, and that's because your floors, walls, and roof are all parts of the larger structural framing system of your house. So here's what we're going to talk about. First, I want to give you an overview of different types of structural framing systems. Then we're going to narrow down on the most common framing system in our area, which is platform framing. And we're going to go into a great deal of detail about that. And we will specifically talk about floors, walls, and roofs. At the end, I want to tie it all together and take a look at an example of a real house and take a look at the platform framing detail from it. Tie it all together. So let's get started talking about those structural systems. Okay, so take a look at this diagram here. We're categorizing different types of structural systems. So over here on the left, these are all structural systems of a house. I'm going to take a closer look at each one of these and kind of give you an example so you know the range of structural systems out there. The first one we're looking at is a structural steel system. You're going to see this in larger buildings, high rises, skyscrapers. Probably not so much, although every now and then there's a structural steel beam, but probably not so much in residential. So it looks like this. They are large steel pieces. These are your I-beams and your steel columns, etc. The next system, which you might see in residential, is called post and beam. And this is where larger wood members form the frame of your house. Okay, the platform framing has rather small wood members. Post and beam framing has large wood members, so they get to be spaced quite a bit further apart. This is still rather popular, especially for any exposed wood work. And here's an example here of some exposed post and beam framing in this lovely arts and crafts patio. So you can see that this is definitely in use in residential. In the light framing category, we're going to be talking about platform framing. It is the most common residential framing system here in the US. And you can see, compare it to post and beam from before, this is made up of many small members. Balloon framing is not currently used typically. If you are, for example, remodeling a house from the early 1900s, you might see this system. And I'm going to enlarge this image for you. You can tell the difference between platform framing and balloon framing. They are both light wood framing types. But platform framing will have a floor system and then a wall system that literally sits on top of that floor platform. And then another floor system and another wall system literally sits on the floor platform. Okay, that's why it's called platform framing. Balloon framing over here on the right has the wall system spanned all the way from the foundation up to the roof. Okay, so the floor system is actually hung on a continuous wall system. So let's pop over here again to the structural systems diagram and talk about concrete. Now, concrete is a monolithic structural system. It's poured into place. We've already talked about the use of concrete in foundations, but it turns out that you can use it for your entire building if you so desire. And a really common example of that is a parking structure. All right, so you can see an example of that here. And just so you know, you can also use it for other buildings. Here is an example of a concrete home. And the last structural system I'm going to talk about today is masonry. You might not know this word. We're getting a little vocabulary here. Masonry is the word for brick, stone, and concrete block. All right, so all of those are different types of masonry. Here's a brick, here's a stone wall, here's concrete block. Now, you also commonly see masonry as a thin veneer kind of glued on the outside of the building to give the image of a brick or stone building. All right, that's this one right here. I've put a big X over it because today we're talking about structural systems. These pieces of stone right here are not structural. They are decorative. All right, they're forming part of the exterior siding. They're visual. They are not a structural system. So where can you see masonry as a structural system? Very commonly here in the US, you see these concrete blocks. All right, this is often used for commercial buildings. If you've ever gone inside of a Costco, you've been in a concrete block building. That's a fairly common example. They absolutely can be used for homes, but it's less common here in the US. If you travel down into Mexico, you'll see very much more common these concrete block structures. And just so you know, stone is a type of masonry, so we have a long history of masonry construction. All right, everybody, we just gave you a super wide overview of all the different types of structural systems you can use or can be used in your building. But remember that we in our class are going to focus in on the most common structural system for residences in the US, and so we'll be talking about the wood platform framing system.